Main articles: Foreign relations of India and Indian Armed Forces. During the 1950s and 60s, India played a pivotal role in the non-aligned movement. From left to right, Gamal Abdel Nasser of United Arab Republic, now Egypt, Josip Broz Tito of Yugoslavia and Jawaharlal Nehru in Belgrade, September 1961. In the 1950s, India strongly supported decolonization in Africa and Asia and played a leading role in the non-aligned movement. After initially cordial relations with neighboring China, India went to war with China in 1962 and was widely thought to have been humiliated. This was followed by another military conflict in 1967 in which India successfully repelled Chinese attack. India has had tense relations with neighboring Pakistan. The two nations have gone to war 4 times, in 1947, 1965, 1971, and 1999. 3 of these wars were fought over the disputed territory of Kashmir, while the third, the 1971 war, followed from India's support for the independence of Bangladesh. In the late 1980s, the Indian military twice intervened abroad at the invitation of the host country, a peacekeeping operation in Sri Lanka between 1987 and 1990, and an armed intervention to prevent a 1988 coup d'état attempt in the Maldives. After the 1965 war with Pakistan, India began to pursue close military and economic ties with the Soviet Union. By the late 1960s, the Soviet Union was its largest arms supplier. Aside from its ongoing special relationship with Russia, India has wide-ranging defense relations with Israel and France. In recent years, it has played key roles in the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation and the World Trade Organization. The nation has provided 100,000 military and police personnel to serve in 35 UN peacekeeping operations across 4 continents. It participates in the East Asia Summit, the G8+5, and other multilateral forums. India has close economic ties with countries in South America, Asia, and Africa. It pursues a Look East policy that seeks to strengthen partnerships with the ASEAN nations, Japan, and South Korea that revolve around many issues, but especially those involving economic investment and regional security. China's nuclear test of 1964, as well as its repeated threats to intervene in support of Pakistan in the 1965 war, convinced India to develop nuclear weapons. India conducted its first nuclear weapons test in 1974 and carried out additional underground testing in 1998. Despite criticism and military sanctions, India has signed neither the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty nor the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, considering both to be flawed and discriminatory. India maintains a no-first-use nuclear policy and is developing a nuclear triad capability as a part of its minimum credible deterrence doctrine. It is developing a ballistic missile defense shield and a 5th-generation fighter jet. Other indigenous military projects involve the design and implementation of Vikrant-class aircraft carriers and Arihant-class nuclear submarines. Since the end of the Cold War, India has increased its economic, strategic, and military cooperation with the United States and the European Union. In 2008, a civilian nuclear agreement was signed between India and the United States. Although India possessed nuclear weapons at the time and was not a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it received waivers from the International Atomic Energy Agency and the Nuclear Suppliers Group, ending earlier restrictions on India's nuclear technology and commerce. As a consequence, India became the 6th de facto nuclear weapons state. India subsequently signed cooperation agreements involving civilian nuclear energy with Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India left, Background: in talks with President Enrique Pena Nieto of Mexico during a visit to Mexico, 2016. The President of India is the Supreme Commander of the nation's armed forces, with 1.45 million active troops. They compose the world's second largest military. It comprises the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, the Indian Air Force, and the Indian Coast Guard. The official Indian defense budget for 2011 was $36 billion, or 1.83% of GDP. Defense expenditure was pegged at $70 billion for fiscal year 2022-23 and increased 9.8% than previous fiscal year. India is the world's second largest arms importer. Between 2016 and 2020, it accounted for 9.5% of the total global arms imports. Much of the military expenditure was focused on defense against Pakistan and countering growing Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean. In May 2017, the Indian Space Research Organisation launched the South Asia Satellite, a gift from India to its neighbouring SAARC countries. In October 2018, India signed a $5.43 billion, over $400 billion, agreement with Russia to procure 4 S-400 Triumph surface-to-air missile defense systems, Russia's most advanced long-range missile defense system. Economy. Main article, Economy of India. According to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Indian economy in 2022 was nominally worth $3.46 trillion. It was the fifth largest economy by market exchange rates and is around $11.6 trillion, the third largest by purchasing power parity, PPP. With its average annual GDP growth rate of 5.8% over the past 2 decades, and reaching 6.1% during 2011-2012, India is one of the world's fastest-growing economies. However, the country ranks 139th in the world in nominal GDP per capita and 118th in GDP per capita at PPP. Until 1991, all Indian governments followed protectionist policies that were influenced by socialist economics. Widespread state intervention and regulation largely walled the economy off from the outside world. An acute balance of payments crisis in 1991 forced the nation to liberalize its economy. Since then, it has moved increasingly towards a free market system by emphasizing both foreign trade and direct investment inflows. India has been a member of World Trade Organization since the 1st of January, 1995. The 522 million worker Indian labor force is the world's second largest, as of 2017. The service sector makes up 55.6% of GDP, the industrial sector 26.3% and the agricultural sector 18.1%. India's foreign exchange remittances of $100 billion in 2022, highest in the world, were contributed to its economy by 32 million Indians working in foreign countries. Major agricultural products include rice, wheat, oilseed, cotton, jute, tea, sugarcane, and potatoes. Major industries include textiles, telecommunications, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, food processing, steel, transport equipment, cement, mining, petroleum, machinery, and software. In 2006, the share of external trade in India's GDP stood at 24%, up from 6% in 1985. In 2008, India's share of world trade was 1.7%. In 2021, India was the world's 9th largest importer and the 16th largest exporter. Major exports include petroleum products, textile goods, jewelry, software, engineering goods, chemicals, and manufactured leather goods. Major imports include crude oil, machinery, gems, fertilizer, and chemicals. Between 2001 and 2011, the contribution of petrochemical and engineering goods to total exports grew from 14% to 42%. India was the world's second largest textile exporter after China in the 2013 calendar year. Averaging an economic growth rate of 7.5% for several years prior to 2007, India has more than doubled its hourly wage rates during the first decade of the 21st century. Some 431 million Indians have left poverty since 1985. India's middle classes are projected to number around 580 million by 2030. The ranking 68th in global competitiveness, as of 2010, India ranks 17th in financial market sophistication, 24th in the banking sector, 44th in business sophistication, and 39th in innovation, ahead of several advanced economies. With 7 of the world's top 15 information technology outsourcing companies based in India, as of 2009, the country is viewed as the second most favorable outsourcing destination after the United States. India is ranked 40th in the Global Innovation Index in 2023. As of 2023, India's consumer market was the world's 5th largest. Driven by growth, India's nominal GDP per capita increased steadily from $308 in 1991. When economic liberalization began, to $1,380 in 2010, to an estimated $1,730 in 2016. It is expected to grow to $2,466 by 2022. However, it has remained lower than those of other Asian developing countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Thailand, and is expected to remain so in the near future. A panorama of Bangalore, the center of India's software development economy. In the 1980s, when the first multinational corporations began to set up centers in India, they chose Bangalore because of the large pool of skilled graduates in the area, in turn due to the many science and engineering colleges in the surrounding region. According to a 2011 PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, report, India's GDP at purchasing power parity could overtake that of the United States by 2045. During the next 4 decades, Indian GDP is expected to grow at an annualized average of 8%, making it potentially the world's fastest growing major economy until 2050. The report highlights key growth factors: a young and rapidly growing working age population, growth in the manufacturing sector because of rising education and engineering skill levels, and sustained growth of the consumer market driven by a rapidly growing middle class. The World Bank cautions that, for India to achieve its economic potential, it must continue to focus on public sector reform, transport infrastructure, agricultural and rural development, removal of labor regulations, education, energy security, and public health and nutrition. According to the Worldwide Cost of Living Report 2017 released by the Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, which was created by comparing more than 400 individual prices across 160 products and services, 4 of the cheapest cities were in India: Bangalore, 3rd, Mumbai, 5th, Chennai, 5th, and New Delhi, 8th. Industries. India's telecommunication industry is the second largest in the world with over 1.2 billion subscribers. It contributes 6.5% to India's GDP. After the third quarter of 2017, India surpassed the US to become the second largest smartphone market in the world after China. The Indian automotive industry, the world's second fastest growing, increased domestic sales by 26% during 2009-2010, and exports by 36% during 2008-2009. In 2022, India became the world's third largest vehicle market after China and the United States, surpassing Japan. At the end of 2011, the Indian IT industry employed 2.8 million professionals, generated revenues close to $100 billion equaling 7.5% of Indian GDP, and contributed 26% of India's merchandise exports. The pharmaceutical industry in India emerged as a global player. As of 2021, with 3,000 pharmaceutical companies and 10,500 manufacturing units, India is the world's third largest pharmaceutical producer, largest producer of generic medicines, and supply up to 50-60% of global vaccines demand. These all contribute up to $24 and 44 cents billions in exports, and India's local pharmaceutical market is estimated up to $42 billion. India is among the top 12 biotech destinations in the world. The Indian biotech industry grew by 15.1% in 2012-2013, increasing its revenues from 204.4 billion Indian rupees to 235.24 billion, $3 and 94 cents billion at June 2013 exchange rates. Energy. Main articles: Energy in India and Energy Policy of India. India's capacity to generate electrical power is 300 gigawatts, of which 42 gigawatts is renewable. The country's usage of coal is a major cause of greenhouse gas emissions by India, but its renewable energy is competing strongly. India emits about 7% of global greenhouse gas emissions. This equates to about 2.5 tons of carbon dioxide per person per year, which is half the world average. Increasing access to electricity and clean cooking with liquefied petroleum gas have been priorities for energy in India. Socio-economic challenges. Despite economic growth during recent decades, India continues to face socio-economic challenges. In 2006, India contained the largest number of people living below the World Bank's international poverty line of $1 and 25 cents per day. The proportion decreased from 60% in 1981 to 42% in 2005. Under the World Bank's later revised poverty line, it was 21% in 2011. 30.7% of India's children under the age of 5 are underweight. According to a Food and Agriculture Organization report in 2015, 15% of the population is undernourished. The midday meal scheme attempts to lower these rates. A 2018 Walk Free Foundation report estimated that nearly 8 million people in India were living in different forms of modern slavery, such as bonded labor, child labor, human trafficking, and forced begging, among others. According to the 2011 census, there were 10.1 million child laborers in the country, a decline of 2.6 million from 12.6 million in 2001. Since 1991, economic inequality between India's states has consistently grown. The per capita net state domestic product of the richest states in 2007 was 3.2 times that of the poorest. Corruption in India is perceived to have decreased. According to the Corruption Perceptions Index, India ranked 78th out of 180 countries in 2018 with a score of 41 out of 100, an improvement from 85th in 2014. Epidemic and pandemic diseases have long been a major factor, including COVID-19 and cholera. Demographics, languages and religion. Main articles: Demographics of India, Languages of India, and Religion in India. See also, South Asian ethnic groups. With 1,210,193,422 residents reported in the 2011 Provisional Census Report, India was the world's second most populous country. Its population grew by 17.64% from 2001 to 2011, compared to 21.54% growth in the previous decade, 1991-2001. The human sex ratio, according to the 2011 census, is 940 females per 1,000 males. The median age was 28.7 as of 2020. The first post-colonial census, conducted in 1951, counted 361 million people. Medical advances made in the last 50 years as well as increased agricultural productivity brought about by the Green Revolution have caused India's population to grow rapidly. The life expectancy in India is 70 years, 71.5 years for women, 68.7 years for men. There are around 93 physicians per 100,000 people. Migration from rural to urban areas has been an important dynamic in India's recent history. The number of people living in urban areas grew by 31.2% between 1991 and 2001. Yet, in 2001, over 70% still lived in rural areas. The level of urbanization increased further from 27.81% in the 2001 census to 31.16% in the 2011 census. The slowing down of the overall population growth rate was due to the sharp decline in the growth rate in rural areas since 1991. According to the 2011 census, there are 53 million plus urban agglomerations in India, among them Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad and Ahmedabad, in decreasing order by population. The literacy rate in 2011 was 74.04%, 65.46% among females and 82.14% among males. The rural-urban literacy gap, which was 21.2 percentage points in 2001, dropped to 16.1 percentage points in 2011. The improvement in the rural literacy rate is twice that of urban areas. Kerala is the most literate state with 93.91% literacy, while Bihar the least with 63.82%. The interior of Santam Basilica, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Christianity is believed to have been introduced to India by the late 2nd century by Syriac-speaking Christians. There are several hundred languages of India. About 74% of Indians speak Indo-Aryan languages, the easternmost branch of the Indo-European languages. 24% speak Dravidian languages, indigenous to South Asia and spoken widely before the spread of Indo-Aryan languages, and 2% speak Austroasiatic languages or the Sino-Tibetan languages. India has no national language. Hindi, with the largest number of speakers, is the official language of the government. English is used extensively in business and administration and has the status of a subsidiary official language. It is important in education, especially as a medium of higher education. Each state and union territory has one or more official languages, and the Constitution recognizes in particular 22 scheduled languages. The 2011 census reported the religion in India with the largest number of followers was Hinduism, 79.80% of the population, followed by Islam, 14.23%. The remaining were Christianity, 2.30%, Sikhism, 1.72%, Buddhism, 0.70%, Jainism, 0.36%, and others, 0.9%. India has the third largest Muslim population, the largest for a non-Muslim majority country. Culture. Main article, Culture of India. Indian cultural history spans more than 4,500 years. During the Vedic period, c. 1700 BCE c. 500 BCE, the foundations of Hindu philosophy, mythology, theology and literature were laid, and many beliefs and practices which still exist today, such as Dharma, Karma, Yoga, and Moksha, were established. India is notable for its religious diversity, with Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Islam, Christianity, and Jainism among the nation's major religions. The predominant religion, Hinduism, has been shaped by various historical schools of thought, including those of the Upanishads, the Yoga Sutras, the Bhakti movement, and by Buddhist philosophy. Visual art. Main article, Indian art. Gupta terracotta relief, Krishna killing the horse demon Keshi, 5th century. India has a very ancient tradition of art, which has exchanged many influences with the rest of Eurasia, especially in the first millennium, when Buddhist art spread with Indian religions to Central, East and Southeast Asia, the last also greatly influenced by Hindu art. Thousands of seals from the Indus Valley civilization of the 3rd millennium BCE have been found, usually carved with animals, but a few with human figures. The Pashupati seal, excavated in Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan, in 1928-29, is the best known. After this there is a long period with virtually nothing surviving. Almost all surviving ancient Indian art thereafter is in various forms of religious sculpture in durable materials, or coins. There was probably originally far more in wood, which is lost. In North India, Mauryan art is the first imperial movement. In the 1st millennium CE, Buddhist art spread with Indian religions to Central, East and Southeast Asia, the last also greatly influenced by Hindu art. Over the following centuries a distinctly Indian style of sculpting the human figure developed, with less interest in articulating precise anatomy than ancient Greek sculpture but showing smoothly flowing forms expressing prana, breath or life force. This is often complicated by the need to give figures multiple arms or heads, or represent different genders on the left and right of figures, as with the Ardhanarishvara form of Shiva and Parvati. Most of the earliest large sculpture is Buddhist, either excavated from Buddhist stupas such as Sanchi, Somnath and Amaravati, or is rock-cut reliefs at sites such as Ajanta, Kala and Ellora. Hindu and Jain sites appear rather later. In spite of this complex mixture of religious traditions, generally, the prevailing artistic style at any time and place has been shared by the major religious groups, and sculptors probably usually served all communities. Gupta art, at its peak c. 300 CE c. 500 CE, is often regarded as a classical period whose influence lingered for many centuries after. It saw a new dominance of Hindu sculpture, as at the Elephanta caves. Across the north, this became rather stiff and formulaic after c. 800 CE, the rich with finely carved detail in the surrounds of statues. But in the south, under the Pallava and Chola dynasties, sculpture in both stone and bronze had a sustained period of great achievement. The large bronzes with Shiva as Nataraja have become an iconic symbol of India. Ancient painting has only survived at a few sites, of which the crowded scenes of court life in the Ajanta caves are by far the most important, but it was evidently highly developed, and is mentioned as a courtly accomplishment in Gupta times. Painted manuscripts of religious texts survive from eastern India about the 10th century onwards, most of the earliest being Buddhist and later Jain. No doubt the style of these was used in larger paintings. The Persian-derived Deccan painting, starting just before the Mughal miniature, between them give the first large body of secular painting, with an emphasis on portraits, and the recording of princely pleasures and wars. The style spread to Hindu courts, especially among the Rajputs, and developed a variety of styles, with the smaller courts often the